She poured the tea, she smiled when spoken to, she cleared the plates and vanished into the shadows of the house. To the most powerful men in the Confederacy, she was invisible, a piece of furniture, and that was their single greatest mistake. Because while they planned troop movements and debated strategy, she was listening. While they wrote dispatches and drew battle lines, she was reading over their shoulders. This servant, this former slave, held a secret that could bring their entire nation to its knees. She was a spy, operating in the one place no one would ever think to look, the very heart of the rebellion, the Confederate White House itself. This is the story of the woman who served the enemy his dinner and then served his secrets to the Union Army. To understand the sheer audacity of this operation, you have to understand Richmond, Virginia in 1863. This wasn't just a city, it was the nerve center of the Confederacy, the capital, a fortress teeming with soldiers, politicians, and rabid secessionists. Paranoia was the air they breathed. Suspicion was a currency. Every stranger was a potential threat, every whisper a possible act of treason. Union sympathizers, known as Unionists, lived in constant fear of being discovered and dragged to the infamous Castle Thunder prison. In this pressure cooker of a city, running any kind of intelligence operation was considered a suicide mission. Running one that reached into the president's own home, that was simply unthinkable. And yet, that's exactly what was happening, orchestrated by a mastermind few would ever suspect. If you find stories of hidden history fascinating, take a second to subscribe. You are in the right place. Every great spy ring has a spy master. For the Richmond network, it was a woman named Elizabeth Van Lew. To her Richmond neighbors, she was Crazy Bet, an odd, wealthy spinster who muttered to herself and seemed to have lost her mind. It was the perfect cover. Van Lew was a fierce, dedicated abolitionist, born into a prominent slave-owning family who had come to despise the institution with every fiber of her being. She used her family's wealth and social standing to build an elaborate web of spies right under the noses of the Confederate authorities. She visited Union prisoners, smuggling them food, medicine, and information. She hid escaped prisoners and Confederate deserters in a secret room in her own mansion. But her greatest asset, her most daring gambit, was a young woman she had once legally owned. Her name was Mary Jane Richards, later known as Mary Bowser. Born into slavery in the Van Lew household, her life took an extraordinary turn. Elizabeth Van Lew, long before the war, had freed her slaves and saw a unique brilliance in Mary. She sent her north to be educated in Philadelphia, an almost unheard-of opportunity for a black woman at the time. Some accounts even suggest Mary spent time in Liberia as a missionary. She wasn't just literate, she was intelligent, observant, and possessed a rare gift that would become her most powerful weapon, a photographic memory. When the war broke out, Mary made a dangerous choice. Instead of staying safe in the North, she returned to the heart of the conflict, to Richmond, to play a role in the great struggle for freedom. The plan Elizabeth Van Lew and Mary Bowser concocted was as simple as it was terrifying. They would leverage the deepest prejudice of the Confederate elite, their belief that black people were unintelligent, incapable of complex thought, and therefore invisible. They reasoned that the high command would speak freely in front of a black servant, never imagining she could understand, let alone memorize, their secrets. The target was the highest value in the entire Confederacy, the home of its president, Jefferson Davis. If they could place Mary inside that house, she would have access to conversations, documents, and strategies that could alter the course of the war. The risk was absolute. If caught, Mary wouldn't be treated as a prisoner of war. She would be seen as a slave in rebellion, and her fate would be brutal and swift. To infiltrate the Confederate White House, Mary couldn't be the educated, sharp woman she was. She had to become someone else entirely. She adopted a new identity, sometimes referred to as Ellen Bond. She affected a slow, dim-witted persona. She would shuffle her feet, avoid eye contact, and pretend to be clumsy and forgetful. It was a humiliating, draining performance, but it was essential for her survival. This disguise was her shield. It allowed her to fade into the background, to be dismissed and ignored. The more foolish she appeared, the more freely the men around her would talk. They saw a simple-minded servant. They had no idea they were looking at a Union intelligence agent with a mind like a steel trap. Through Elizabeth Van Loo's social connections and a bit of luck, the opportunity arose. Verena Davis, the First Lady of the Confederacy, was looking for household help. Mary, playing her role as the unassuming servant, secured the position. Suddenly, she was in. She walked the halls where the rebellion was being managed. She served meals to Jefferson Davis and his cabinet members. She cleaned the rooms where military strategies were debated late into the night. Every moment was fraught with tension. A wrong word, a flicker of intelligence in her eyes, a sign that she was paying too much attention, could betray her. She had successfully entered the lion's den, but now the real work and the real danger began. Mary's primary job was gathering information, and she did it with remarkable skill. Her method was simple. She used her invisibility. While clearing a dining table after a state dinner, she would listen to the general's conversations about troop strength and morale. While dusting Jefferson Davis's study, her eyes would scan the documents and maps left on his desk. She would find discarded notes and scraps of paper in wastebaskets. Because no one considered her a threat, security was shockingly lax around her. They spoke of supply shortages, planned attacks, and political infighting as if she weren't even in the room. Every word, every number, every location was a piece of the puzzle, and Mary was meticulously putting it all together in her mind. This is where Mary's education and her photographic memory became the Union's secret weapon. She couldn't risk writing anything down. She couldn't steal documents. Everything had to be carried out in her head. She would read a full page of a military report, a shipping manifest, or a letter, and commit it to memory, word for word. Imagine the mental discipline required to not just remember the gist, but the exact phrasing, the specific numbers of soldiers, the precise dates of a planned offensive. This ability elevated her from a simple eavesdropper to a high-level intelligence asset. The information she carried in her mind was more valuable than a whole battalion of soldiers. Getting the information was only half the battle. Now she had to get it out. Mary was the centerpiece of a much larger network. Van Loo established a chain of couriers and safe houses throughout Richmond. The process was a carefully choreographed relay. Mary would pass her memorized intelligence to another agent, often a black baker or laundress who had legitimate business near the Confederate White House. Sometimes the message was delivered verbally. Other times it was encoded. A message might be hidden inside the sole of a shoe, baked into a loaf of bread, or concealed within a hollowed-out egg. This chain of agents, many of them black men and women, risked their lives with every handoff, moving the vital intelligence from the heart of the enemy capital to Elizabeth Van Loo's command post. From the Van Loo mansion, the information began its final, most dangerous journey to the Union High Command. Elizabeth Van Loo was a master of cryptography. She developed a complex cipher system using a book as a key. A message that looked like a simple shopping list or a personal letter was in fact a coded report.
The recipient would need the exact same edition of the same book to decode it. For example, a series of numbers like 8, 14, 5 might mean page 8, line 14, word 5. This system was incredibly difficult to break without the key. The intelligence, gathered by Mary's eyes and ears, was now protected by Van Loo's brilliant mind, ready to be smuggled through Confederate lines to generals like Ulysses S. Grant.
So what was the impact of this intelligence? It was immense. While it's hard to attribute any single victory to one spy, the information from the Richmond Ring consistently gave Union generals a critical edge. They learned about Confederate troop movements in advance, allowing them to prepare ambushes or reinforce weak points. They knew about supply shortages, which helped them target Confederate logistics. General Grant himself later credited Elizabeth Van Loo's network, stating that the intelligence she provided was among the most valuable he received during the war. Mary Bowser was the source of much of that information. Her reports from inside the Confederate White House directly influenced Union strategy and contributed to the eventual collapse of the Confederacy.
Let's get specific. During the brutal, grinding siege of Petersburg and Richmond in 1864 and 1865, intelligence was paramount. Jefferson Davis's speeches, his private conversations with General Robert E. Lee, and his assessments of Confederate morale were all overheard by Mary. She reportedly learned the Confederates were planning to mine the tunnels under Grant's position, giving the Union time to prepare. She passed on details about the city's depleted defenses and the desperation of its leadership. This kind of high-level, real-time intelligence allowed Grant to tighten the noose around the Confederate capital, saving countless Union lives and shortening the war. The President of the Confederacy was, unknowingly, having his strategies delivered directly to his greatest adversary.
We have to pause and consider the psychological toll this took on Mary. Every single day was a performance. Every moment carried the risk of death. Imagine the terror of serving dinner to a man, knowing you were actively working to destroy everything he stands for. Imagine the self-control required to hear a piece of earth-shattering intelligence and show no reaction at all. There were undoubtedly close calls. A question from Verena Davis that was a little too probing. A Confederate official who held her gaze a second too long. The constant gnawing fear of a single mistake, a single slip of the tongue that would lead to her discovery, torture, and execution. Her bravery wasn't just in gathering the secrets, it was in surviving the pressure. Did anyone in the Confederate White House ever suspect her? The historical record is murky, but some accounts suggest that near the end, Verena Davis began to grow suspicious. She was an intelligent woman herself and may have noticed that Mary seemed unusually bright for an uneducated servant. In her memoirs, written long after the war, Verena mentioned a servant who was all eyes and ears, though she never named Mary specifically. It's possible that as the Confederacy began to crumble and leaks became more apparent, suspicion finally started to fall on the woman who was always present, yet never truly seen. The net may have been closing in.
In April 1865, the end came. As Union forces closed in on Richmond, the Confederate government dissolved into chaos. Jefferson Davis and his cabinet prepared to flee. The city was evacuated, and retreating Confederate soldiers set fire to military supplies, which quickly spread, engulfing the capital in flames. In this apocalyptic scene, Mary's mission was nearing its end. According to some stories, in her final act of defiance, she attempted to burn down the Confederate White House to prevent it from falling into Union hands, a symbolic gesture to erase the seat of the rebellion. Her work was done.
Now she had to escape with her life. Mary Bowser successfully escaped the burning city and the collapsing Confederacy. Her life after the war is where her story, tragically, begins to fade. We know she worked for the Freedmen's Bureau and as a teacher, trying to educate newly freed slaves. She even gave public speeches about her time as a spy, but the historical record is frustratingly incomplete. Why? Because the U.S. government, to protect the agents of the Richmond Spy Ring and their families who still lived in the South, deliberately destroyed most of the records of their activities. The spy master, Elizabeth Van Lew, also burned her own papers, including, it is believed, Mary's detailed diary of her time in the Confederate White House. The most complete account of her incredible story was lost to the flames.
For nearly a century, Mary Bowser was little more than a footnote, a ghost in the annals of Civil War history. Her story was dismissed by some as folklore. But in recent decades, historians, particularly scholars like Lois Levine, have painstakingly pieced her life back together. They have sifted through scattered letters, military records, and personal memoirs. They found mentions of her in Elizabeth Van Lew's surviving correspondence. They found newspaper articles from 1865 that described her lectures. While her own diary is gone, these fragments, when put together, confirm the core of her astonishing story. They prove that this incredible woman existed and that her contribution was real and significant.
The question remains, why was such a remarkable hero forgotten for so long? The deliberate destruction of records is part of the answer, but the other part is more uncomfortable. History is often written by the powerful. In the post-war era, the stories that were celebrated were those of generals and presidents, almost exclusively white men. The contributions of women, and especially of African Americans, were often minimized or ignored entirely. Mary Bowser was both. A society that was still grappling with deep-seated racism and sexism simply wasn't ready to celebrate a black woman as a master spy who helped bring down the Confederacy. Her story challenged the accepted narratives of the time, and so it was allowed to fade. Thankfully, that is changing. Mary Bowser is finally beginning to receive the recognition she so richly deserves. In 1995, she was inducted into the Military Intelligence Hall of Fame at Fort Huachuca, Arizona. Her citation honors her as one of the highest-placed and most productive intelligence agents of the Civil War. Her story is now being told in books, documentaries, and articles. She is being reclaimed as a true American hero, not just a hero for African Americans or for women, but for anyone who values courage, ingenuity, and the relentless pursuit of freedom. She proved that one person in the right place with enough bravery can indeed change the world. Even with this renewed interest, mysteries remain. What was in her lost diary? What other specific pieces of intelligence did she uncover? What were the full details of her life after the war? We may never know the complete story. Her life is a powerful reminder that history is not always a complete and tidy book. Sometimes the most important stories are found in the margins, in the whispers, and in the spaces between the official records. The gaps in her story don't diminish her legacy. They add to its mystique and remind us of the countless unsung heroes whose tales have been lost to time. Mary Bowser's legacy is profound. She weaponized the prejudices used against her. She turned invisibility into a superpower. Her story forces us to reconsider our definition of a hero. Heroes aren't just soldiers on a battlefield. They can be the quiet, observant people in the background, those who fight their battles with intellect and courage rather than with a sword or a gun. She represents the hidden resistance, the silent struggle for justice that often goes unnoticed. Her life is a testament to the idea that no matter how powerless you may seem to others, you can still possess the power to shape history.
In the end, this is more than just a spy story. It's a story about human potential. It's about a woman who was born into a system designed to crush her spirit, who rose above it, educated herself, and returned to dismantle that very system from the inside out. She risked everything, not for fame or glory. She knew her work would have to remain secret, but for the simple, powerful idea that all people deserve to be free. She was a servant, a spy, a teacher, and a true American patriot. Her name was Mary Bowser, and her story deserves to be told.
The American Civil War is full of incredible stories, but few are as compelling as Mary Bowser's. It makes you wonder how many other heroes like her have been lost to history. What's the most incredible, little-known historical story you've ever heard? Let me know in the comments below. I read every one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next page of history.